Hi everybody here, it's Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates, also the author of the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. I've got with me here today Stephen Sumner. Stephen's got some great experience of digital marketing, and he's here to share that with you. Stephen, do you want to introduce yourself, just so and give you, to use the American term, your coordinates, so people can know where to get hold of you?
Indeed, I'm currently the CEO, group CEO of a company called Tag10.com, and we've created some technology that allows the customer, i.e. you and me, to avoid the irritating adverts that we see on TV and online. So we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on, because I've got an interesting journey as to how we arrived at the technology itself. Okay,
so in terms of if someone wanted to get hold of you, where would be the best place to get hold of you, Stephen?
They go to our website, Tag10.com. Okay. And all the contact details, telephone number, email address, and also there's a short explainer video on there of the Tag10 platform. Okay, so you've got a really interesting journey that you've been on, and this is not necessarily I've done a lot of journeys about personal branding. This is one where you've been on in terms of where search became a boardroom issue. Indeed. So just over 3.5 years ago, I was working as interim CMO for a company that you may have heard of called Music Magpie. Yes. These are the guys that buy and also sell your old CDs, DVDs, games, and latterly they also sell your old mobile phones and other technology solutions. So the guys really were very first into the marketplace and created a fairly interesting niche. Given the volume of the business, they're just short of 100 million turnover. They were and still are, as far as I'm aware, the #1 third-party seller across eBay, Amazon, worldwide. So effectively, they buy your old media. They do a little bit of refurb. They immediately list them in significant volumes across every marketplace around the globe, and ultimately that's how they grew the business. So I got involved.
They buy and they sell.
Yeah, so they're buying and selling, but their end customer is you and me, and their buying source is you and me. So quite an interesting sort of area of business, and one that certainly I was interested in when I got approached by the former chairman of the Royal Mail, a guy called I forgot his name now. That's how clever I am. It will come back.
It's early in the morning for you.
It is early in the morning. I'm over in sunny Spain, so my apologies. So I got approached by the CEO and the chairman of this business, and it had experienced significant growth over a very small period of time, and effectively what they were looking to try and do was bring some more sort of corporate structure into the business, but also get to grips with what they felt was lacking from the sort of the digital marketing side of things. The bulk of the marketing at that stage was primarily driven by TV. Yep. So raising huge brand awareness, that was working for them for quite a period of time pretty well. And the inevitable search engine optimization around the site, but primarily most of their activity was going on paid search media. So I joined the business really to sort of do a full root and branch review and really look at their marketing strategy overall, because the plan was to really ramp up things into the US and then other territories around the globe. And as much as they were selling via the marketplaces, ultimately the customers belonged to those marketplaces. They didn't really belong to Music Magpie. So I got involved and started to have a look at where the marketing was being spent. I hate the term ROI, but for the sake of this conversation, really look at sort of what return we were getting off our marketing spend. And I very quickly, through some forensic work with our media agency, I might add, started to look at the fact that by and large we were spending, in excess of 10 million a year on TV advertising. But I'd sort of tracked through the last 2 to 3 years of activity. We were seeing a significant decline in return and also in response.
Right.
And I'll come back to why that was in a moment. So inevitably, you're trying to fix the problem rather than sort of continue to identify and sort of navel gaze too long at what the issue is. So we then started to turn to the digital side of the business, where I actually felt that it was being under-supported and underserved. And it was a fairly blunt instrument on that side of the digital landscape as well. It was the sites were digitally optimized in terms of search engine stuff, so all the meta tags and all of the usual stuff was in the site, but it was also being filled in the back by some very, very heavy paid advertising activity. And bizarrely enough, I could see a very similar pattern happening there. But I was also very aware of a significant problem that was very prevalent about 3.5 years ago. People might remember it, a few updates from Google called Penguin, Panda, and various other things that began with P. And as this problem surfaced, then that created even more P's, I can assure you. So we had a look at the digital landscape, and really there was one sort of common theme that was happening both within TV and within the sort of the digital area. And I won't cover all the reasons why the business was underperforming, but let's just, for the sake of this discussion, focus that these were the two key areas. So poor response coming back from TV advertising, and certainly not getting anywhere near the level of engagement that we would have expected for the many millions of pounds that we were spending on PPC and other paid campaigns. I do apologise. They have now got workmen in the building who are
Keep going.
drilling.
So you're in Spain. I mean, it's still.
Yeah. Well, and it's also they only arrived about 2 minutes before this session. So when we started to dig a little bit deeper, and particularly on the TV side of things, what we'd started to identify very quickly was the fact that as people were becoming empowered with things like the Sky Plus box over in the States, TiVo have been out there since 1999. All of these advances in technology were really designed to allow you and me the ability to start to program our own our schedules. The downside to that was also it allowed you and me to avoid all of those irritating ad breaks that we had to put up with. So as a result of that was certainly one area that we'd picked up and was quite difficult. So then when we looked at that on the digital landscape side of things, we could also see two fairly serious things that were occurring. One was I'd identified very quickly that we were paying a significant amount of money for a lot of backlinks into the site. So for those of you that were around in the day, there was something that you could purchase, a little bot that would go crawl the web and it would effectively put a backlink on to your website around lots of others. Well, we had in excess of 15,000 of these. So when the update from Google kicked in, that had an inevitable effect on Magpie's business, pretty devastating to be honest, which was that the site then went blind on Google because Google effectively penalized the entire site for what it classed, quite rightly so, as an overt use of toxic backlinks. So there was I, a month into the business, having to present not only the bad news that the many millions of pounds that were being spent on TV wasn't returning anything, but ultimately we've now lost visibility of our website across the one platform that really delivers most of our traffic. And I have to tell you, I've been around in business many years, and when you stood in a boardroom and the entire board are looking at you for the answer as if this is something that happens every single day of the week, it's pretty unnerving. I didn't really know what the solution was because I'd never experienced it myself before, and this is a problem that had been going back in the business some sort of 3 to 4 years by the incumbent media agency. So the first action really was to put a plan together to get them to help us to recover. but also we were looking at recriminations further downstream. Not at that stage. What we were looking to do was try and recover as much as we could. One of the key pillars of my original strategy when I went into the business was I couldn't understand why we weren't doing a lot of our own content-driven stuff. We're a business that buys and sells things that we're all sort of quite passionate about, which is music, films, if you're into the gaming side of things, that as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there for us to sort of talk to our audience about stories that would relate to them. And we weren't doing any of this. So one of the original discussions that I'd had with the incumbent media agency was to consider looking at a content strategy plan, whilst they were also then looking to resolve and clear out the toxic backlinks.
Because I've seen you being quite vocal on social media about broadcast marketing.
Yeah.
And the fact that that people are still broadcasting rather than actually educating customers or using a content type strategy. Is that
what it is? Yeah, the whole industry, for as long as any of us can remember, whichever channel that it is that in order to enjoy that content, be it on radio, be it on TV, be it on the movies, even when you go to the cinema, you sit down with your bag of popcorn and, you get the ads that are there. And that's the way it's always been. And therefore, we all accept it, or we have all accepted it, up to probably about the last 3 to 5 years, where we've been empowered with technology to actually put ourselves in the driving seat around what we want to do. So, the whole industry is geared against pushing.
Because people go onto social media and they enjoy it, but people don't go and start watching ads, do they?
No, I don't know anybody. If you do a straw poll, I don't know anybody. If you stop 10 people in the street and say, how often do you go and find a website that's got that's just littered with adverts? And do you really go off and put the kettle on during that football match so that you can come back and watch the adverts that are there? So I suppose it's just one of those obvious things that you don't think about because it's become the accepted norm. So we all accept that, and the same thing happens clearly online. That the guys that are not experiencing the level of return from TV are now shifting big bucks into the online space. But ultimately, it all boils down to one thing: they're pushing content as opposed to allowing you and me to access content that we're quite happy to engage with, that's of interest to us. Because I love Formula One. Right. If you were to write articles about Formula One, I'd probably be more inclined to read that. However, if you don't like Formula One, no matter how compelling the content is, no matter how compelling the advertising is that's around it, I'm never going to read it. And I think that's what's wrong with the industry, is that they use data rather than behavior.
Right.
So, the big data stick comes out. Well, we know all of these things about you. Well, to be honest, guys, that again is old school as far as I'm concerned. You look at the way that the old demographic profiling used to take place, and that would assume that the guy and the girl that live next door to you and me, Tim, in our respective houses, enjoy the same holidays, shop in the same places, and probably have got very similar behavioural characteristics. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The only real thing that's in common is probably an aspirational value to the fact that they're living in the postcode area that they're living in. All of the other valuable bits are missing. Yes. So there's a lot of blunt instruments that's out there. So if we go back to the issue with Magpie, where effectively we're staring into a very, very dark tunnel, and all of the information and advice that we'd got back was that it could possibly take us a good 6 to 8 months to recover, and Google don't help you along that path. So they don't tell you, they don't provide you with a list that says, look, guys, here's all of these toxic links, you need to get rid of these other ones are okay. I took a fairly blunt approach to the whole problem, to be honest, which was, rather than trying to work out which were the good ones and which ones were the bad ones, we effectively just killed every backlink that there was. And at the time we were doing that, we also then looked to instigate a content-led strategy.
Right.
And that was really to sort of say, look, who do we want to talk to? Who would be interested in listening to us? And how many of those people might just be interested in reading something that's of interest? And how many of them might be interested in reading that and actually doing something off the back of it? So, you know, we write stories about, and we work with agencies and businesses that talk about how you can make money from your old clutter. We created campaigns around how addicted we all are to our mobile phones, and the fact that mobile phone sort of technology is forever changing, and as such, there's a whole host of people that are forever chasing the next new functions on their phone and maybe want to trade it in.
I remember that one, and I remember it. You know, it was one of the first. Well, I think it was the first thing that I where people went, oh yeah, I do actually want the next phone, and hey, wow, someone's going to buy this one off me and take it away. Hey, they've actually they've given me a solution to a problem.
Yeah, and I think the difference with that approach to the standard sort of paid media approach is, to a certain extent, on paid media, you can see very quickly whether something is working or whether it's not working. The reality is, even though you can see that it's working, you're never quite sure. It's the old advertising adage. You're never quite sure which bit of it is working. You know the headline might work, but you're never quite sure which bits of the content have worked, and vice versa for the bit that hasn't. So it's a very difficult area to refine. So I think if you go into a content-led approach, the first thing you've got to consider is that it's an investment. And it's an investment in not just dollars or pounds. It's an investment in your business. And you have to align your entire business around that approach. And also then you've got to make it become part of the day-to-day activity of the thinking within the organization. So rather than sitting around a table and brainstorming ideas around what we think are good, you know, we work with media agencies, we work with other agencies, but a lot of the really clever stuff actually came from within the organization, because we're closer to the product, we're closer to the activity on a day-to-day basis. And we tested, and some of the content failed, but we learned from that. An awful lot of it actually worked extremely well. And as a result of that, our 8-month sabbatical that we thought we were going to have from Google turned into a 2.5-month sabbatical.
Right.
And we started to see pages reappearing within the site, because now what we'd moved into was an area of earned media.
Yep.
So there were organisations like the BBC, like TechCrunch,
yep.
like the Lad Bible,
yep.
Like Unilad, all of these guys that found our content interesting and wanted to share that with their audiences. As such, their audiences indirectly found their way back to Music Magpie's website or Music Magpie's app. And that actually started the whole recovery process. And it was quite interesting, because had I gone in to the business on day one and said, look guys, you know, we're going to ditch TV, so 75% of our spend on TV is not going to happen. We're going to stop spending all this money on PPC, so you know, a 1.5 million on PPC annually is going to go down the drain, and we're actually going to invest in something that's probably going to take us 6 months before we see any benefits. I would never, ever, 3.5 years ago, have got that through a board. Yeah. Because even a board that isn't digitally savvy would be very, very bold to ditch what they think is working today in favor of something. So I think sometimes you've got to take a parallel approach. So I'm not suggesting that everybody, to prove the point, needs to go blind on Google, but you certainly need to have a parallel sort of strategy that sort of works with how do you make the old support the new. And I call that sort of the rebuild strategy is based on leveraging what you've already got to provide a path for the future. And bizarrely enough, within 6 months, we'd regained our #1 organic position within Google. We had significantly reduced the reliance on PPC. We stopped advertising on TV for 4 months of the year, which was totally unheard of. We targeted our spend in many different ways and continued to test in many different ways. For me, that's what marketing is about. It's about testing and continuous testing, ABs, and learn lots of different things. But as a result of that, we turned the business around within a 12-month period. I can't give you the numbers for confidential reasons, but when I arrived, it was loss-making. When I left, it had a significant monthly contribution to the bottom line,
Good.
which actually allowed the business to go out and refinance itself. So, you know, it isn't a panacea. Go and get yourself blind on Google. But believe you me, at that moment in time, it helped me to get that argument across through the board. And I personally learned an awful lot out of that exercise. There was a lot of people involved.
And I mean, I see a lot of chatter on social media about SEO and content marketing, and what I like about the story is the fact that it is actually a boardroom issue. There is a lot of people that are talking about SEO, and it's kind of like, you know, sort of, and this internal conversation that goes on in social media amongst the people that we all know and within our community, and it's not quite often that it goes outside of that. And the fact that you've actually got a great case study around how to use content and how to use storytelling is, for me, you know, which is why I wanted you to get on here and talk about it. I mean, it's a great case study on what to do and what not to do, but actually this is a boardroom issue.
It is, and I'm certainly not advocating to anybody that, you know, you stop spending on other forms of marketing. TV will stay around. It'll just evolve into different areas. You know, you've got streaming now, which means that the broadcasters are no longer in control of which device you're using to view their content. So you have to be mindful of going where the audiences are, but also be very mindful that because you've got an addressable audience doesn't necessarily mean you've got an engaged audience. So it's making sure that you've got the balance between the two. Again, for SEO, you know, the technical reasons for SEO are there for Bing and for Google. And they wrote the rules. I am long enough in the tooth to have been around before our friends at Google arrived and started playing with very clever algorithms. And I also remember that prior to Google, if you were good enough, believe it or not, at building a website and writing information about your business that was relevant on your website, you could actually get to a higher position than Marks and Spencer's. Simply because the information on your website was relevant to the people that were actually trying to find it. I also do believe that PPC has a value, but it has a value on the basis of, you know, you're buying some attention at a stage where you're looking to earn it, and there is no greater value than earned attention than bought attention, because, you know, it's very transitory, as we know, is the bought attention piece. Whereas if you look to become almost a thought provoker for a subject matter that is interest to your audience, I think that you're going to stay around in those discussions a lot longer than just a headline that sort of buys attention today. Yeah. So that's sort of really the Music Magpie.
Okay. So what are you doing now, Stephen?
So I mean, I think, as I was saying before, I learned an awful lot from that person, and a couple of things came out of it for me. One was when we were looking at where the traffic was coming into the site from. It was coming in from multiple areas, but primarily it was either direct traffic, so people that already knew the brand, and they probably knew the brand because of the TV advertising and all of the other stuff that we've mentioned. But also there was a lot of indirect traffic coming into the site, and as we'd started to build out the content-led strategy, that really sort of rang so true that actually this traffic was coming in from other sites that were referencing our business indirectly through the content that we had created. And that for me really generated a bit of a light bulb moment, if anything, Tim, which was the whole needs to support the cost of providing us with that content, be it whatever channel it is, be it whatever sport we enjoy, whatever movies we enjoy. Somebody somewhere along the line has got to pay the price for that content and that entertainment. You and I on the other side of the fence want to enjoy that content and entertainment, but we actually don't want to have to put up with the intrusive nature of advertising in the way that it's found its way through to the internet. And it was really sort of that problem that I focused on and became obsessed about, which was, you know, what if there was a way where you and I, whilst we're looking and reading content, could access what I call curious intent? And that is that as I'm watching something, and I will just use an example, say a Bond movie. We're all watching a Bond movie. Most people enjoy Bond. And throughout that Bond movie, you'll sit there and subliminally, you're asking yourself some questions. You know, is that spa hotel up in Switzerland real? If it is, where is it? I wonder how much it is to stay there for the night or go for the week. So there's all of those sort of subliminal questions. And lots of people do it in lots of different areas, but that really was the germ of the idea for Tagton. And I thought, if I could come up with, I wasn't really a technology solution initially, because I'm not a technology guy, albeit I've been around the industry that long. I can at least hold my own in a room with guys a lot cleverer than me that can put this together. So we started to do a bit of whiteboarding with a few people that I know. So look, here's the problem. Every agency that I know of recognize the problem. It's the elephant in the room. They then go and talk to their clients about it, because the clients are saying the same thing as me. You know, what's happening with my ad spend, and what else can we do about it? They don't have the answer. And equally on the other end, you've got music Magpie of this world that's spending all that money. Who's saying, well, give me something that I can at least sort of work around. So Tagtent really came out of that, and I took the opposite approach to the entire industry, which is the entire advertising industry tries to find ways to push its message to you and me. And what I did with Tagtent is I thought, well, if I could tap into your curiosity whilst you're watching a TV program, regardless of the channel, whilst you're reading or viewing content, regardless of the channel, and just almost Shazam style allowed you to pull that information at the point that you are curious.
Right.
That I felt was an interesting challenge for us to pursue. Now, I also then said, well, what if a number of people looked at that information and did nothing with it? However, given the fact that I can now provide the information that says, well, here's the story that people looked at, but actually here's the elements of that story that people found extremely interesting. Here's the elements of the story that that people actually really just sort of skim past. Would that be of value to certain people? And I think the answer, well, I know that the answer now is most definitely yes. But also then I sort of said, well, you know, we then took it a stage further, and somebody then, having read that bit of content or viewed that bit of content, wanted to actually go and do something off the back of it. So maybe they then wanted to, first of all, find out about that spa hotel in Switzerland in the Bond movie. And they found out how much it is. And they then managed to book a long weekend. But in order to get to this hotel in Switzerland, they also need to book a flight. And so on and so on. So, and the whole idea around Tagtent was really to provide people with information at the point of their curiosity that would also lead to some degree of intent. And so the whole platform is based around you, me, and the rest of the audience world, pulling information when we want to, at any point in time during our experience of content, around people, places, and any products that are related to it. Now, I know as a marketing guy that is significant intent activity. It is passion, eyeball, audience measurement activity, which the whole industry is obsessed about. It is real statistical, valuable behavioral stuff, and that behavioral stuff is where we can add a lot more value to big brands, small brands, who themselves are trying to gauge whether or not what they're doing is of value, is of interest, how they could refine that. For the larger movies, or maybe some of these sporting events that are always trying to get key sponsors and brands on board. we could provide them with information that says, actually, you know, Reebok might be the favorite sponsor here, but your audience, whilst they're watching that live football game, are more interested in those Adidas football boots or the Nike shirts that people are wearing. But actually, you're not even talking to Adidas or to Nike. That kind of sort of discussion, that kind of argument. So this was just under 3 years ago when I came out of Magpie and hadn't done what we'd done, and I really spent 18 months working through this, and didn't have a great deal of cash, but had what I felt was a great idea. And what we did was we split the cash that I'd put into the business in two ways. One was to go and develop a prototype, but before we developed the prototype, the rest of the cash went to go and speak to some of the biggest media agencies on the planet. These are the guys who are responsible for buying that media space, both in TV land and in digital land as well. And we sat down in a room and we created a concept video, which is the concept video you'll see on our website. And we talked about the problem. We talked about the elephant in the room. And behind closed doors, they all agreed and they all accepted that the industry was in turmoil. We then showed them the video and took them through the tag tent concept, and we got extremely huge validation. And so we thought that was interesting, but you know, that was a lot of air miles to get that level of validation. But effectively, these are the guys that are going to be encouraging their clients to do something different, and their clients want to do something different. So we also felt that before we press forward on the prototype, wouldn't it be a good idea to go and speak to some of these big global clients, i.e. the guys that are spending multi-million dollar budgets on the advertising side? And we presented the tag tent concept to them. So we presented into Eurosport, we presented into Sky Sports, we presented into Nike, we presented into the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, and the list goes on. With the media agencies, we presented into TBWA, we presented into Ogilvy Mather, we presented into Dentsu Aegis, etc. And both sides of the fence, totally, surprise, agree. There is a huge problem, and we got a huge, and I mean a huge reaction and commitment from both sides. Commitment certainly from some of the big brands that at this stage of the game, I wasn't sure we were going to get that commitment from. So 2017 sees us now moving into a fairly significant phase for us, which is we built the prototype in 2016. Yeah. We've wrapped some test campaigns. Yeah. The engagement is huge. Because we're engaging with people who are already interested in the subject matter. Yeah. And as a result of their interest in the subject matter, we're feeding their curiosity. From their curiosity, we're therefore providing people with the opportunity to leverage intent. From that intent creates a value for the whole of the ecosystem. That means that ultimately you and I may well be able to watch that Bond movie without actually paying for a ticket to go into the cinema. That would be a great goal. From a tag tent viewpoint, that would be a huge tick in the box. I think we're still some way from that, but ultimately we can do that. We can do all of this in live TV. Right. So if you're watching a soccer game at any point during that 90 minutes, and we can feed your curiosity around people, places, and products, and we can do that across multiple media channels. So 2017 really sees us sort of using the platform in anger, so to speak. We're going to run a number of commercial proof of concepts with some fairly large organizations, all of which have agreed to commit to this because they need a solution on both sides of the fence. We believe that our solution will be de facto because we're a good 2 years in front. I'm sure that there'll be lots of other people that will be out there at some stage wanting to sort of copy and do an iterative approach. We've now got business partners operating in Australia, in South Africa, and also in the US as well as Europe. and that was 2016. Really, the 2016 saw a lot of activity, and 2017 looks to be probably twice as or 3 times as daft as 2016 was going to be, but all extremely enjoyable, based on the fact that, you know, we're solving a huge problem, and the whole industry is still obsessed with how they can continue to push that message at us rather than actually engage with us in a way, a manner that we choose.
It's a great story, Stephen. I mean, you know, if you're, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, if you're watching Formula One or watching football or watching X Factor, all of these things, quite often what you're doing is you're also having a discussion on a second screen about it. So you're probably talking about on social media. So there is a hunger, I think, for not just to see the content and Formula One and see the cars go by, but actually, as you say, have this curiosity. And you've probably got some money in your pocket, and you're probably willing to buy something.
Yeah, and the challenge with the media agencies and with the big brands is that there's a lot of businesses around at the moment that's prepared to write them a check every single month based on a set of numbers. And so the challenge for them is, how do they part with that guaranteed bit of income today, albeit a declining bit of income, and test some new frontiers? And I'm delighted to say we are working now with some very forward-thinking businesses that are probably akin to, and I mean this in the most kind way, akin to the problem that I would never have got over the board table at Music Magpie had they not been staring in the face of being blind on Google for 6 to 8 months. At that stage, you know, we were willing to try and test most things, and I think the industry is at that point now, Tim. So, you know, fortunately for us, we do think that we're pushing against an open door. We don't think it's going to be an overnight success, but we certainly believe that within the next 12 to 18 months, tag temp will become certainly far more prevalent than it is now. And you know, you'll start to use it in the same way, I suppose, that you change channels.
Fantastic. So great story, Stephen. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Remind people where they can get hold of you and where you're. Okay,
so my name's Stephen Sumner, Group CEO for tagtent.com. Visit us at the website. All my contact details are on there. And Tim, thanks for inviting me on the program. Much appreciated. And Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year, and have a good time your last few days in Spain.
I will indeed. Back to the snow.
Thank you. Cheers, Stephen.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye.